interviewing the leading private equity executives and unlocking the secrets of success. Welcome to the Private Equity Podcast with Alex Rawlings.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Private Equity Podcast. Joining us today is Jimmy Vaiopoulos, Chief Financial Officer of Stack Capital. Welcome, and thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today, Jimmy.
Thank you, Alex, and thanks for having me on.
So, standard question for us. If you could give us a 60 to 90 second breakdown of you, please.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so I initially studied engineering and crazy enough decided to get my CA or CPA, as it's called here, KPMG. Worked at both audit and then advisory, where I did M&A, due diligence, project finance. Worked in Vancouver, also got a chance to work in Chile. And after that, started as a CFO of a renewable energy company based out of New York. And that was a great opportunity where I got to, do acquisitions that grew our company by two and scaled it quite big, also internationally. Then after that, I worked at one of the first Bitcoin mining companies. I was a CFO there, was an early public company in that space in early 2018. I remember people saying, what are you doing leaving a job that people understand to do Bitcoin mining? And that was just after the hype had popped. And so that was an incredible opportunity. And I got to see that thing from lows of $50 million valuation to about $3 billion. So it was really incredible journey there, and got to take that to NASDAQ as well. And then I just had a recent move to where I'm at now, which is Stack Capital. So I was a co-founder here, and I'm currently the CFO. And really, it's an innovative product in a pretty established space, which is private equity. And what we're doing here is we change the structure around in that we're a public company, and this has many benefits in compared to the typical structure where broader access you can have. This is one of the very few products where you have credit investors and non-accredited investors, more liquidity, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this, and a lot more flexibility. So really excited to be in the private space. I've done private investments, I've built up companies, and I think it's a great company with big potential.
Absolutely. So keen to get into your innovative model. Absolutely. So what's one of the mistakes that you see either private equity firms or their portfolio companies making, and what actions would you take to correct them?
Yeah, there's always a lot to point to. The biggest thing right now that you're seeing in the market is a lot of piling into specific investments and valuations getting to pretty frothy levels. And so you see this even right now for companies pre-revenue. They don't have their product proven out, and some of them are reaching pretty astronomical and at times unicorn level valuations. And so the way we're seeing that is we really are looking for companies later stage in the venture capital world, and so we want those companies that have product market fit, have revenues. We're seeing the growth, in many cases, profitable companies. And so you're protected on the downside if kind of the floor falls under, and they have a lot to stand on themselves.
Interesting. So as you mentioned, Stacks, finally built a platform that allows, standard retail non-accredited investors to participate in your venture private equity type funds. What was it that inspired you guys to set up on this model, as opposed to what I regard as the traditional model of raising from high net worth institutional investors, etc.?
Yeah, we really saw a gap in the market. So we saw a lot of folks that wanted to invest in the space, especially given that a lot of these private companies, these fast growing ones, are staying private longer. And so getting access to these types of companies was getting increasingly difficult. And just even the structure that you have to invest in this, lots of times you have to invest in either a fund that gives you you need a 10-year lockup, which is very difficult for many folks, or you're investing in a company where you get almost no information. In that, we're seeing some of those, and getting bad prices, very hefty fees, and it's just a pass through. So and no information, right? Like how do you make that kind of decision? And so we want to bridge that gap and create Stack Capital as a way for both accredited investors, but also to invest, because lots of them don't have access, or these are very exclusive deals. But also, this is one of the only ways that non-accredited investors can get involved, and we take away any of the needs for lockups. We're a publicly traded company, so you can get in and out as you wish. And it also makes it very simple from a tax perspective, right? So lots of times there's all these tax forms that are needed and very hefty paperwork. This is as easy as going on your brokerage account, buying in, and you're getting access to some of the most innovative and disruptive companies out there. And we're still growing our portfolio, but again, just really trying to bridge that gap.
No, that's right. I think it's really interesting that you guys have gone down that route. Have you had much kind of pushback? Has it been quite a bit of, locally and Canadian VC and PE firms kind of been like, you shouldn't be doing this? Have you had much of that, or is it kind of either not hit that stage or you've not seen it?
There's always skeptics out there. Whenever you're trying something different, you're going to get folks that raise an eyebrow. And but the bottom line is we are, this structure actually makes more sense than a lot of the other ones, because this is a permanent capital structure. Right? A lot of other funds have an end of life, or very specific guidelines. This is something where we can continually invest and be patient with our investors, and a lot of the investors in Stack Capital. So be patient with our portfolio companies, and our investors. They range from very large Canadian pension funds to retail investors, but we do have a lot of institutional investors in Stack Capital. So they understand the model, they understand these take time, and given we're a public company, we've raised over $100 million. That puts us ahead and in people's minds, in that we're a real player out there.
Interesting. And so I suppose if you think about the kind of fund structure and how late stage venture works and the rounds and things like that, do you have any maybe not restrictions, but is there any areas that become a little bit more complex with not having that big raise and then being able to invest? And you've got obviously investors investing in a basically a stock type model. Is there much that changes from that perspective?
Yeah, so it's all what we've set as our constraints when building this. It's it's a pretty flexible mandate. We're sector agnostic. Generally, we're investing in later stage companies. There are things that we avoid, and things that we're just not allowed to do. And so one of the things we avoid are biotech companies. Ones that are binary and expecting. Either they're going to get approval or not. That's not the type of investing that we do, although there's a lot of interesting companies in that space. We also don't invest in cryptocurrencies or tokens. And so, there's, again, great opportunities, very interesting companies there, but just not in our mandate as a public company to hold a lot of those types of tokens or Bitcoin, although we can invest in cryptocurrency focused companies. We do have restrictions, but generally we keep that wide mandate to focus on, any great opportunity that we see out there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then obviously you mentioned about crypto, obviously with your background, and I know, prior to us going on record here, you'd mentioned about your interest in that space, which I know there's been a big dip in it as of recording, which we're recording this on the 17th of November. So hopefully it will have recovered when this goes live. But I know Bitcoin has taken a bit of a hit and taken a lot of the altcoins and everything else with it. But we'll no doubt see a recovery
Got to get used to the volatility with if you're looking at crypto, that's for sure.
Well, you shouldn't be in it if you're if you don't like volatility. So
that's right.
There's certainly plenty of that. But what goes up must come down, and obviously what goes down, you would hope, will go back up, especially with the crypto world. So something we've not had is anybody on the actual fund side, of either a VC or private equity, growth equity business. So what are give us a bit of an insight into how that kind of role plays out, but also kind of some of the challenges that may be on the fund side that you experience, because I know obviously you've worked on public companies, you've worked in privately owned businesses, so you've got kind of quite a broad exposure of being in the finance world. But what's it like as a CFO in a fund, but also what are the challenges you face as a CFO in a fund structure?
Yeah, so we're a bit different in that we're a public company, which makes being a CFO a bit there's more stringent requirements that are needed from us, right? We're publicly filing our quarterly statements. In terms of the regulatory bar, we're on the senior exchange here in Canada. I believe it's the 5th biggest exchange in the world, and so being the CFO of a public company just has certain requirements that I'm used to, but it could be a bit different. But other than that, of course, I get help with that. The great thing that I love is that I also get to be on the investment side as well, and so I'm working with the investment team and sourcing and doing analysis over potential portfolio companies, and that's really the fun part of my job, right? Like the CFO stuff is the kind of ongoing and do my capital budgets and work with the board and do everything there. But what really gets me excited every morning is what company am I going to look at that day? Where am I doing a deep dive? And so, but of course, I'm just bringing a different perspective as someone who's been a CFO and had that where, which is very different than the rest of the investment team. So I'm very happy I get to bring that perspective there.
Yeah, perfect. And I see, obviously, I mentioned you've had a background in public companies, private businesses, crypto organizations. What was it that convinced you to move into the VC private equity world?
I find it so exciting. So I really love innovation, and I love disruptive industries and the leading edge technology that's out there. And there's no better place to look for things like that than in the private market, right? That's really where you're finding from the seed early stage all the way to the still growing but $1 billion plus companies that I personally find incredibly exciting. And so the chance to focus and dedicate to that space was something that I didn't have to think twice about. And then also just generally we're seeing a trend where private companies are staying private longer, and private companies are becoming very large very quickly. And so there's new unicorns that are coming out all the time in North America and the rest of the world. And so it's always fun to be part of a growing sector of the economy. And so that's probably those are the two biggest things that really allured me to this space.
And what are some of the, with setting up your own firm, what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced as a leadership team? That maybe someone else is going to go through this process, and I'm sure there's people listening that have either considered it or maybe even considering. What would you say for them to maybe watch out on and be like, look, be mindful of this. This takes longer than you think. This will probably come up and you won't realize.
Yeah. So, I mean, patience is a key thing here. Like, you have the private market, there's no rush the same way that you would see in other industries. These, if it needs to take another month, it'll take another month. And there's lots of things that can cause that. And just on the other side, you got to be on your toes and you got to be ready to move quick, because in the same way, these deals can come together at a lightning pace. And so you need to have both those virtues, and also it's one of these things where there's, at least this year, there's an incredible amount of opportunity. So getting focus, and for us, we only have so many bullets that we can shoot in terms of investments. And so really picking the right ones that fit our profile, it takes a lot of work. So yeah, it's those are all the key pieces, I would say.
Okay, great. And moving on to talent side of things, what 3 attributes do you believe that make a top performer?
Yeah, in terms of a top performer, I think in this space, being open-minded is very important. You see so many industries. Lots of times you're seeing things that are very new, and it's hard to completely picture how it fits into society or the economy. And so you have to really be open-minded to new things, right? These are new concepts in many cases. And then I also say discipline would probably be a big one, where you need to know what you are after, what kind of companies you want, and sticking to it. It's very easy to veer off and be distracted because there's so many amazing things to look at. And just generally, it's, I would say the team and cohesiveness, fit, is very key in terms of being a top performer. Like the only way you can perform well is being in the right environment and with the right people. And so that was a big thing here. I think we got an incredible team and board and advisory that work very well together. So yeah, those are probably the first 3 that come to mind.
Absolutely, completely agree with those. And I like this question. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self, Jimmy?
That's good. It's a good question. I would say if I were to talk to myself, my 20-year-old self, I would say take more risks. That's one thing that is very easy to not, and you have to remember my mentality. Like, I studied engineering. I'm an accountant by training. When you're young, you have all the opportunity to take all the risks. And the biggest thing that you get the biggest resource you have when you're young is time. And so spend your time on the edge of things, taking more risks. The biggest thing would be where to work. And so that's the biggest thing. And even at many ages, risk is fun, and it's good to have the upside.
I completely agree with that. I think that would be definitely my advice for myself as well. And what do you love about the venture capital private equity industry, and equally, what do you dislike about it?
So especially from our perspective, given we're sector agnostic, I love doing these deep dives, right? Like finding an industry and a company and really trying to understand it to the deepest level possible. That's something I absolutely don't take for granted. In terms of what I dislike, it's in the private market. So I come from public space as well. In the public space, it's very institutionalized, right? The exact information that you have the right to see, exactly where to find it. And usually you have access in bigger ways. These are companies that have, bigger teams, right? In the private market, it's not always the case. The information you're getting in some cases are just not good enough to invest. It's not the way you may like to see it. Everything is unique, and you have to really see every situation as a different case. And there's a maturity process that goes on, right? So you're just seeing these companies earlier on in their life cycle, and so you have to be ready to take in a different set of information in a different way.
All makes sense. All very good. So what are your influences? What do you read? What do you watch? What do you listen? Other than, I'm guessing, crypto updates daily.
I would say the biggest way that I I kind of take in information and learn new things. I used to be a big reader. I used to read a lot. For some reason now, I've just been very into podcasts, just like this. And I just find you can, learn so much. I find no matter what company I want to look at or what industry, I can find likely more content than I even have time to consume, including, the CEO talking about industries or, leading experts or economists, whatever it may be in whatever industry. There is information out there. And this is a perfect example. If someone wants to learn about Stack, what better way than to just hear it right from the source, from the people who are living it day by day. And I think it's just a great way to consume content. But yeah, in terms of, I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to founders every day, and I just find I learn so much on the job here. And so if there's someone I need to talk to, I can, there's an equity analyst, it's an expert on an industry, or phone up a founder that I can help. And I'm very fortunate for that.
Yeah, I think it's great. We can listen, talk, well, probably not talk to, but we can listen and we can engage with, business leaders from all over the world and understand what someone's doing as a competitor, as a completely different factor, as a really successful, I was listening to Mark Zuckerberg do an interview with Gary Vaynerchuk earlier today. And you just like, when would you get kind of access like that to business leaders previously? You just, you wouldn't, most people hadn't heard of who ran, obviously what was Facebook and now Meta, but, we wouldn't know about what these people do in these various different businesses, let alone get an insight into what their strategy is and what they're planning on doing. So I think it's amazing the access to information that we have, although I agree, it can be overwhelming, certainly from there.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Jimmy, if anybody wants to get in touch with you and reach out, how best do they get in touch, please?
You know what? I'll throw out my email for anyone who wants to email me directly with any questions. So it's very simply Jimmy, so JIMMY at stackcapitalgroup.com. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn just by my name, or Twitter. I'm at JIMVAIO. So I'm generally pretty open to folks that reach out and want to chat.
Perfect. We'll put that all in the show notes. So thank you very much for joining us today. And I really appreciate your insight. Leaves us lots to think about. Interesting to hear about a firm as well, giving access to, general retail investors. It's not something I've come across previously. So I think that's really, really interesting. And thank you very much for everything you've shared today. Of
course. Thank you very much for having me, Alex. Anytime.
No, and as always, thank you very much for everybody listening and who's joined us today to listen into this podcast. Of course, if you ever need private equity or portfolio executive hiring, please do reach out to us at Raw Selection. But until the next time, keep smashing it. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Private Equity Podcast on www.raw-selection.com.